Hello everybody. Anybody around? Anybody here yet? Welcome to this brand new live stream on my channel. This is the debut, the start of doing live streams on this channel. So if you're here, thank you. Welcome to something new. In this live stream, I just want to get you guys to ask me any questions you have. So anything you want to ask, gonna make this a Q&A, and I'm also gonna try and float some other ideas that I have as well. So there's a couple of things that I'm thinking about doing, looking at doing with the channel, and I just want you to kind of chime in with me on that. So if you're here, drop it in the comments. Hey Catman, hello. Always on the channel. Thank you so much for tuning in so regularly and just being so great. And thank you for being a part of it. So yeah, any questions that you guys have, I want you to drop them in the comments. The aim of this really is to, as I say, have a few questions floated in here and I'll answer them. I'll be here for about half an hour or so, and then I want to kind of in the future do these as a every week thing. So let's do, I think probably do the Q&A. I'm going to pre-record them, but you can, if you are watching this on the replay, put your comments and questions in the chat below and in the comments below, and I will answer any questions live with anybody online now. And then next week, hopefully I can do a pre-recorded Q&A session so I can really get into your questions. And on the live streaming front, I've been thinking about doing the tier list videos. So the tier list videos that I've been doing, I thought it would be super cool if we could kind of all do them together. So I'm going to look at doing tier list videos and come up with some different lists, and we can do them together. So you can put in the chat where you think something should be ranked, and I'll share the screen with you, and you guys can see that there. So yeah, any questions any of you have, hello, thank you for tuning back in again, really appreciate it. So yeah, any questions you have, let me know. I think this is a little bit behind, so doing it through StreamYard and stuff, anything you're saying or commenting will come a little bit late for me, but hopefully I can get to it as quickly as possible. I've also got my phone up on the side, so maybe I can get to anything in the chat there quicker as well. I'll just take a look now, or maybe I won't, I'm not sure. Hopefully anything you ask will pop up on the right hand side. As I say, this is my first ever live stream, so go easy if there's anything wrong with it or you think, oh, he's rubbish at this. Cool question, Loof, I think it is. Would you recommend getting into bass straight away or guitar to bass pipeline? So he's saying, would you recommend going bass or guitar to then bass? I think typically I would go the other way around. So I would go bass to guitar. That's how I learn and where I came from. So originally my dad bought me a guitar when I was about 9 or 10. And for me, I played trumpet at the time. And playing bass just made more sense because it was just a single note instrument. I had to just make one note sound good, and focus on that and rhythm and timing and everything like that. And it kind of matched up with my trumpet playing and horn playing. There were a few bass players out there that kind of started as horn players in, their high school or whatever. So I personally go bass to guitar, which is the way that I've gone. I think it gives you a really solid rhythmic foundation as well to go to guitar after playing bass, rather than the other way around, because you've spent your whole time playing in time, and if you don't play in time as a bass player and don't sound good, then it's not going to sound good for anyone in the band. So I think personally I would go bass first. I think it's a little bit easier on the fingers as well. You only have to focus on doing one note at a time with your left hand, and same on the right hand really. So that's what I would do personally. Hey everybody in the chat. Hey Sam, that's my best mate tuning in. Next question from Martin Rios. What do you prefer, jazz or P? Difficult question, with not really one answer. I think if I could only have one, from a just me on my own enjoying it point of view, I would have a P. But if it was from a needing to be a versatile musician, I would have a jazz. I really like the sound of P basses. I like the mid-range of a P bass, and it almost never doesn't work. But there are times where I might want a little bit more of that bite or something a little bit more staccato, a bit more attack, and having that bridge pickup really helps in situations like that. So that's what I would go for out of those two. Oh, all the questions are sliding down to the bit that I can't see. 1 second. Double screening it. Oh, camera autofocus thing. Sorry, I would turn that off. 1 moment. Sorry, this is an awful view you're getting right now. There we go. Hopefully that should stop autofocusing. Just pushing it back a little bit. There we go. Awesome. So yeah, Jazz or P, I do prefer the jazz bass in general. No, I do prefer the P bass personally in general, but if you want to be versatile, go for the jazz bass, I'd say. I use the jazz in the studio this week. So it just depends on the song, depends on the track, and what you're doing. And I have a review of a jazz bass coming out on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that one. Which of the Helix family is my favourite? It is not the LT Sam that you have, I'm sorry. I like probably most, that's Horatio the cat by the way everybody. I like most the HX Stomp because it's just so versatile and so small. It can do so much and it always fits into whatever I'm doing in some way or other. Whereas I find if I've got something like the Helix Floor, Helix LT, those type of bigger Helixes are just a bit of a pain to route everything through and back out of, and you have to have that as your whole pedal board and you can't integrate other pedals with it as easily. You definitely can, but I think the HX Stomp is the best for that because you can just literally plug straight in and use it as a pedal or whatever you want to, audio interface at the end of the chain, anything really. So HX Stomp is my favourite. Why did I start doing videos in YouTube? I started doing videos on YouTube because I read Yannick Gizdala's book, You're a Musician, Now What? And in his book, he talks about developing a platform that you can kind of express yourself on and also share what you've learned with other people and let people into that. And he started doing it with a blog post and doing it as a blog. But if any of you guys have checked out Yannick's channel on YouTube, he does loads of videos. So he does that as well, and he's since kind of moved to more YouTube, I think, than blogging or anything. He's also got the podcast, which is with Chelsea, his wife, so Two Bass Hit. That's cool. And the reason I started YouTube pretty much from that reason, that point of view, to kind of just share expertise, have a platform to share me as a player when I was auditioning or applying for gigs. It started out like that, and then I kind of just moved into doing more and more videos. I originally was developing, I guess, more expertise in bass gear than I thought I ever would. And I found a lot of the things online that I was reading just never matched up to my own opinion. And that's why the channel exists and why I keep doing videos now. So that's pretty much why, to help you guys out, to help you make decisions, and to basically do what I didn't have available. A lot of bass reviews were really hard to tell what someone was doing. So that's why I had that. I had a formula in mind for doing the back-to-back thing so you could hear exactly what was going on. And that was the idea, really. So it was just to give people the thing that I was missing when I was looking for gear reviews, and also then to further help people out and do what I'm doing now, really. So I hope that kind of answers that question. How many songs should someone learn a month? How often do you learn a new song? At this stage, I pretty much never learn a new song unless it's in the studio or for somebody else to play, because I am more of a session player and do it professionally now rather than as much for my own joy of learning a song. A lot of the times I won't really learn something, but I'll sit down and work it out as it goes through. So for example, we'll just play the song, the verse and the chorus, and then hopefully by the second verse I'm kind of locked in and playing with it, and then second chorus and so on. So really the idea of that is just to improve my ear and enable me to really quickly get a grasp of things. If there's something really cool that I want to learn, it'll typically be something crazy, jazzy, things like Got a Match and those kind of unison lines in jazz, things that are quite technical, and that's the point where I kind of sit down and have to learn. But I don't think you should necessarily learn a number of songs or think of learning songs as just this thing overall and in and of itself. I think you should just more focus on just playing the bass and trying to get it as close to accurate as possible. So don't worry about, oh, did I learn 7 songs this month? I'd more worry about how quickly can I learn something? How quickly can I get a grasp of something? How quickly can I lock in with that song that's playing and make it sound like I kind of know what I'm doing? And then go in and find those little details if it's a track you really like. But I think in the broader scheme of things, the best thing you can do is be able to quickly grab a piece of music as a bass player and do what you can. Next question, sorry. Thoughts on tape wound strings as well. I don't like tape wound strings personally, playing them, but I can understand why people do like them. They're a little bit too floppy and they're a little bit too almost kind of rubbery sounding for me. That's not a really good description, but they don't serve me so much. There's a little bit too much attack. It's attack and body. Well, it's more attack and boom. And I want a bit more sustain and mid-range clarity. And tape wounds don't really have that for me. They're cool, they've got their own thing going on, and there might be the odd session where that's really useful. But in general, I wouldn't use them for many things. I prefer to use rounds or flats. But if you are enjoying them, just go for it and do it and make it your sound and enjoy them, because that's what they're there for. They are an option. And I imagine one day when I've got, money to spare and basses to spare, I'll shove tape rounds on one. But for now, flats and mostly round wounds for me. CV50s. Thinking about getting a CV50s P bass. Should I be daunted by the neck size? I've mainly only used Ibanez basses with relatively thin necks before. They are definitely bigger than an Ibanez neck, but they are not huge by any means. They are more 50s style than most bass necks, but compared to the Ibanez, it's going to be a bit of a step up, but not too much. If you bought a proper old school 50s Fender, or even one of the Japanese or custom shop replicas of a 50s Fender, that's got a big U-shaped neck on it. But the Squier is big but not huge. It's smaller than my Precision bass, which is a 60s style one. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. But it depends how you want to play. If you want to play the same kind of things as you play on your Ibanez, then it might be a little bit more challenging. But if you take it for what it is and play the kind of things that you want to maybe play on a P bass, more sitting in with a groove and not so much being busy, I think it's a good bass for that. So that would be my advice on the neck size. Who is my favourite bass player? That is a great question, and one which does not have a short answer. So many players. My big thing was just session players. So the guys that sat in studios and played parts for songs, because songs are really what I'm about. Songs and playing for songs is what I'm about. So Lee Sklar, probably the main inspiration. Michael Rhodes in Nashville, Jimmy Lee Sloas in Nashville. Jimmy Lee's playing on all the main country pop stuff right now, and I really love his playing, and have a lot of that kind of style I've integrated into my own playing. Nathan East was another huge one along with Lee Sklar. I'd say those would probably be my big four. All players that play a little bit more than just sitting and supporting, but what they add is really a melody and something that adds to the vocal line. Freddie Washington as well. Freddie Washington absolutely goes in that list as well. So those would be my kind of top five, I guess. But obviously there are so many great players, and I've gone into that kind of Victor Wooten, Yannick Gzdala side of things, Henrik Linder, and I really admire those players and love that as well. But I just never have invested as much time in that stuff as I have in songs. I really like the collaborative nature of just playing songs and playing parts for songs. So that's why they are in there. Horatio, you are completely taking up the stream. Next question. What is it like being a professional session musician? Interesting. Obviously not the best time for it now. Come on, Horatio, come sit in my lap. Obviously not the best time for it now. It's difficult. Sometimes it's really fun, and sometimes it's not very fun at all. But it doesn't feel like work most of the time, so that's the great thing. Things I love about it are just the kind of improv-y gigs, so turning up and playing jazz stuff, turning up and just playing some tunes at a bar in London when that was a thing and possible. I used to love doing that stuff. And other than that, I just really like recording parts, as I kind of alluded to in my bass player question. answer. Just playing parts is my favourite thing, so really enjoy that. So playing songs for people and recording, and that's fortunately what I get to do all the time at the minute, being here at the studio and producing and recording stuff. So that's real fun for me. So I love it and I wouldn't change it, but there are the odd bad days when you get there and someone's called you in for a wedding gig and you get there and the singer's not great, or whatever it happens to be, and they kind of become paid gigs, and well, they're all paid but just for the money, and that's a bit sad. So points like that, it's not so good, but in general I really enjoy it. Those who just tune in late on this stream and who are watching the replay, I want this Q&A to be kind of more regular, but I'm thinking of doing it more as a Q&A that I pre-record, and you can leave comments with questions in the comments below. So if you're in the chat and your question doesn't get answered tonight, leave it in the comments, and also if you are watching this on the replay, leave your questions in the comments, and I will try and kind of collect them up and do a video maybe every week, every 2 weeks of Q&A. And live streaming, I've said earlier to the guys that were here, I want to start doing the tier lists as a live stream, because I think that would be super fun. So I'm going to share screen and we can do a tier list maybe every other week as well. So maybe have Q&A 1 week, tier list the next. I want to try and balance everything out on the channel. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to be planning to do, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that, and I can take your comments from the live chat and we can formulate our own collective community tier lists. So yeah, that's just a little bit of an update. Back to some more questions. I'm trying to be speedier with these. Is the $700 price difference between a Vintera and a CV Jazz bass really worth it? No, is my short answer to that one. I don't think that is. I think if you're going to put that price difference, I would just step up to... Yeah, I'd probably step right up to the American Fender, but I'd find one second hand. So I'd find an original series second hand. I really like the original series, so I'd kind of stay with the CV and then move up. There's something I want to do a video on the economics of bass and buying basses and selling basses at some point, and I think you're better off getting the more expensive bass because you're going to get that money back out. Buying something in that Mexican range is difficult because you're not going to retain the value of the bass, and you lose a lot of money on that. So I'd personally go for original or stick with a CV. Favorite bass that I own is a difficult question. My Sadowski PJ5, I have a real soft spot for, because I always wanted a PJ5 in Olympic white with a tortoiseshell scratch plate and a Murado or rosewood fingerboard. And I found that bass finally. When I found that bass, I wasn't even looking for it. I was looking for a completely different other bass on Facebook Marketplace. And then it came up and I just went, that was destined to happen. So I love that bass. But my MTD is also a killer bass. The best feeling bass in the world. I love that MTD. Feels so good to play and it feels great in the hand. The neck is great. But I think the Sadowski just edges it because I can use it for almost anything. Active, passive, P or J type tones. That's the one for me. Next. Do I like pedals? How much? I do like pedals. I've got the Kali 76 compressors. I use the baby one for live, and I use the big one for in the studio to replicate that 1176 type thing. But a lot of the time, I don't use many pedals because I don't play too many heavy genres, and I'd rather get the grind from an amp. So I do like pedals, but I struggle to justify having so many. I do have a whole load of them stored away on a rack that I need to kind of collect and bring here, but I like pedals, but they have their place, and I find I just don't need them that much. If I'm just enjoying the instrument, playing around, I really like a pedal, but in general the Helix does it for me. So I'd rather spend more time learning how to get everything out of the Helix than anything else. Next question. I think that is the Vintera Jazz worth premium over the Player Jazz. Different things really. If you want it to sound more vintagey and have a bigger neck profile, then you go for the Vintera. If you want just a really solid P bass that fits everything, then I would just stick with the Player. Hopefully that answered. I did have a Thunderbird. I had it for So that question was, have you ever tried a Thunderbird? Yes, and I owned one. It was the shortest lived bass I think I've ever had. I had it for probably about a month before I had to sell it on again. I also managed to leave a chip on the front of it, which was really irritating as well. So I completely devalued it and then had to sell it on. I didn't enjoy it. I thought it was really cool. I was playing in a band that I wasn't really enjoying at the time. It was quite just basic rock stuff. And I was trying to think of the best way that I could enjoy it. And I thought, oh, I'll do that kind of, 1.70s Gene Simmons thing, or the Nikki Sixx Motley Crue thing of just wear a Thunderbird low slung and just play root notes. And the neck was not for me. The neck was really heavily finished and really thin. The tone was cool, but quite an impractical bass. It didn't fit in gig bags. It was just a pain. So I love the look of them, and I love the Firebird guitars. I think they're awesome, but I wouldn't keep a Thunderbird, I don't think. Thoughts on the Sean Hurley, the bass player. Sean Hurley is a great player. He goes in that list as well. Lady Antebellum's record Heartbreak, I love his work on there. It's really cool. And he's the guy that kind of taught me to swing quavers. So if you're playing quarter notes, eighth notes, swinging them, and the quarters actually, eighth and quarter notes, just swinging them a little bit, and it gives such a cool feel against really straight drums. You get this da 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 da, and it kind of leans into each of the beats. So that's something I picked up from Sean Hurley and an article from him, and then you can hear it really clearly on the track Army by Lady Antebellum if you want to go check that out. Cats or dogs? Cats every time. I would love a husky or a Malamute type dog though, a big dog. I like dogs that look like wolves because wolves are my favourite animal, but if I can't have one of those, I will have a cat. Any tips for setting up your tone preamp on an active only bass walking into a studio session? I'm taking that is both of those things at the same time. Setting up your tone preamp on an active bass. If you're going into a studio session, I would go in with the tone that you're comfortable with. That's what I would do. I would put your favourite foot forward, as they say. I think I probably got that wrong, but yeah, I put that foot forward, and whatever tone you think sounds great on your bass, just do that. So put your EQ to that setting, and then if someone says that's awful, or you hear it on the monitor, or you hear it in your headphones and go, that's not working for this track, then start tweaking. But just be comfortable. Do what you do your regular thing, and then tweak from there. That's what I'd say. Don't start tweaking before. It's always a thing where you think you read something the night before you go into the studio, whether you're mixing, producing, whatever. You read a little tip, or you're just learning up on the subject, and you think, oh, I'll go and start by doing that. Don't start by doing that. Don't do anything without listening first. So listen and then tweak. Rosewood or maple fingerboard or something else? Correct question for the or something else. I personally like Palfero Morado. That's the same wood, but just different names for it. Or Purple Heart, which is on my MTD, which I love. Purple Heart is so smooth. It doesn't have the bite of an Ebony. Ebony has a really crisp attack that I don't quite like. Purple Heart's just very clean, clear, warm enough, crisp enough. Love it, but super rare wood that almost never gets used. And yes, I would go for Palfero because I think it's quite similar to Purple Heart, but with a bit more grain. Just really nice balanced woods, slightly to the warmer side, but not super bright. I like these questions because they are not just talking about bass gear. As much as my channel is about bass gear, I love talking about technique and all that good stuff. Hi, what does your usual practice routine consist of? Can't speak. From Bap Pa. Sorry, I probably pronounced that really badly. Practice routine really depends now. Nowadays, I don't do so much hardcore practicing. I'm doing more general stuff. One of the things I do regularly is to play through scales, certain scales up and down in all 12 keys. When I was learning, the one lesson I really learned from one of my bass teachers that I had for a little while was you need to play it in all 12 keys, and he'd make me sit in the lesson, and until I could play a scale in all 12 keys, he'd make me go back to the start. So it'd be C major, play it, move to F, then move to B flat, E flat, then A flat, D flat, and so on. And that was something that I learned. So I just learned to practice everything in 12 keys. So now when I do something, I'll do an exercise, say Like I say, major scales, minor scales, just to keep the fingers warm, that kind of thing, keep everything feeling comfortable, and I'll do it in all 12 keys. That is my standard practice routine. And then if I'm just wanting to keep playing, pop on some tunes, just pop on something that I really enjoy playing along to. And like I was describing earlier, talking about doing, listening to a song and playing it as quickly as possible, let the verse, let the chorus go, and then start playing in the second verse. That type of thing, to get my ear really highly attuned. Getting your ear attuned and knowing that note is that on the fingerboard is super important in my experience. Lowest price range I'd buy a bass in. I'd buy a bass range I would buy a bass in any price range, is what I was trying to say, if I thought it was great. That CV Jaguar bass, you've seen me rave about it a load, and I very nearly bought that. I haven't, because I just don't think I need any more PJ basses or extra basses, but whatever, I buy mostly second hand, so that changes that whole thing really, and I can get better value for lower price. So it does depend, but I'd buy anything. Hey Niall, thank you for tuning in once again. Here's the question. Thank you for the kind comment about the channel. In my recording bass chain setup, bass cover vids for YouTube, should I go from my bass into my preamp pedal, then my compressor pedal, or vice versa? I personally go compressor. No, I go compressor into preamp pedal, depending on which pedal. Good question. I think it's really up to you as to what you think is best. In most signal chains in the studio, for example, I'm going to compress going in, then into whatever is shaping my tone. I think that just gets a more consistent tone to the preamp pedal, and that just means that that's kind of got a really nice signal to work with. I prefer that because most preamps, if you're adding any gain or distortion or anything, you're also adding compression. So I'd rather compress first and then add more gain after that, than have gain which has squished it and then you're squishing it even more. I'd rather squish a little bit and then add the gain, and I think you get the gain balance better that way around. So that's personally what I do, but whatever sounds best is the way to go. And in a studio chain, for example, you're going to go compressor on the way in, then you're going to go preamp, and then or preamp then compressor, either, and then later in the chain it's going to be more compression and then more compression, so I wouldn't worry about it. But yeah, I go compressor, preamp. Do I like to use the metronome and how often? I love click. Always using click in tracks, playing back to things. Yeah, I love it. I don't enjoy the sound of a metronome, but I do enjoy the sound of a click embedded into a track. And sometimes you just need a metronome to keep you really solid. If you can't play to a metronome, I suggest you get out there and do it and work on it, because it's such a critical skill and can be so useful to help everything in your playing, make you be strict on your timing, make you be strict in your practice, and you'll know when you're hitting those notes in the right place. If you're just doing scales with a metronome, you know that you can do it. And you can also, by having a metronome, you know when you're pushing ahead or behind. It just makes you really in control, and you can additionally just do an exercise at one tempo and slowly increase the tempo or slowly decrease the tempo, and you can really see your own improvement in that way. What is your recommendation for a great practice amp? How powerful should it be? Practice amps, I don't think you need them to be powerful at all. I would go for, probably if I had no money, no object, I would probably choose a small tube amp of some kind. It would probably be, off the top of my head, something like the Ampex 20 watt small heads. What's the range? It's not a VB, I don't think it is. Is it a PF? I think it's a PF20, it's a Portaflex 20. That little tube head, I'd go for one of those. And a 115, a 112, something like that. Even a 110. So you could turn it up a little bit, get a good nice signal out of the speaker. That's what I would go for, a great practice amp. But for any practice amp, I'd say as long as you've got 100 watts, and probably if it's a lower quality amp, a 12-inch speaker. If it's a slightly higher quality amp, a 10, but anything between 10 to 15-inch, it's going to sound good and make you sound good, and means you can be critical with your tone. If you have an amp that doesn't sound very good, you can't be critical with yourself and what you're doing and what you're practicing. P or J, I answered this a little bit earlier. P for me, But if I was to have only one bass, it would have to probably be a J or a PJ. Have you ever been able to get a single coil based bass as quiet (brackets by shielding it as possible, by shielding it properly) as a humbucker based bass? I've never read based bass before. It's quite difficult to read and say. I like the tone of single coils, but they're just so noisy. True. I don't think so, but I also never run single coils on their own. I blend typically. My Warwick Star bass might be the only bass that's got single coils. It's got kind of a it's a halfway between a single coil and a humbucker. It's a hot wound single coil. And I do use that sometimes. That has a little bit of hum, but not much at all. I personally just choose to blend them slightly different, so I'd have just a little nudge more bridge pickup than front pickup on a Jazz. You can definitely get them quieter. Personally, I haven't done it, and I've only got hum cancelling basses, so I feel like I'm not well placed to answer that question. So no, but I do know what you mean about the single coil tone. There is a certain mid-range quality to them that I like. Last question here from Martin Rios. Thoughts on Mesa Boogie? Thoughts on Mesa Boogie now they're moved to Gibson? That's another question. Maybe that's a question for another day. I do like Mesa Boogie as a company. I had really bad luck with my Mesa Boogies. I had a Big Block 700, 750, and a 4x10 speaker cab, which is a Powerhouse 410, but the older one with the slightly different ports, and a Mesa Boogie Scout 1x15 combo. That combo was one of the best, probably the best sounding combo I've ever played, other than an actual B15. And that amp was good, but I had a little bit of an issue with noise. It had a little bit of scratchy, crackly pots and stuff. So that had to get repaired. The Big Block, I was playing at home one day when I was in my teens, and suddenly there was smoke coming out the top of the amp, and it shut down. So that wasn't good. I had to get that fixed as well. And the Powerhouse 410, one of the speakers went a bit funny in it. I never pushed it very hard or anything. It was an 8 ohm cab. But yeah, that didn't go well either. So I love the tone of Mesa Boogie amps. They are great. The tube stuff's great. Walkabout is probably one of my favourite amps out there. Great sounding amp. But yeah, that's kind of my experience with Mesa Boogie. I love what they do. I had really bad luck with them, and so that's why I don't use them now. I prefer Aguilar probably just a little bit, but there is a great versatility in the range from Mesa, so great stuff. So that's kind of my half hour. I've got to dash off, but thank you so much for everyone that's tuned in. If you're watching this on the replay, please leave questions in the comments below, and I'm going to try and put together a video with your questions and do that more regularly. And next up, I want to do a live stream tier list, so look out for that. I'm really hoping that can be great fun, and we can all get chatting about different bases and where we think things should be. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you again for tuning in and making this live stream a success. I was really worried that no one would come and no one would ask questions, so I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys very, very soon. New video out on Tuesday. See you later.